Welcome back, everybody. Today we're doing a deep dive into the world of neuroscience.
Oh, yeah.
But with a twist. We're going to be exploring
Okay.
how some of nature's deadliest toxins are actually giving us
Really?
amazing insights into how the brain works.
That's pretty counterintuitive, but it's true. These toxins can act like incredibly precise tools,
Yeah.
allowing us to target specific parts of the nervous system
Okay.
and see what happens when those parts are disrupted.
So it's like we're using a laser pointer to highlight
Yes.
exactly what we want to study.
Exactly. A laser pointer made of venom.
Right. Except in this case, the laser pointer is made of venom.
Yeah, and by carefully studying these disruptions,
Yeah.
we can gain a much deeper understanding of how the nervous system functions normally.
So we're not just looking at the chaos.
Right.
We're learning from the chaos.
Precisely. It's like, imagine you want to understand how a clock works.
Okay.
You could take it apart and examine all the pieces, but you might miss how those pieces work together to keep time.
You would.
But if you strategically jam a tiny wrench into a specific gear, you can see how the entire system responds to that disruption.
Okay, so we're using these toxins as tiny wrenches.
Yes.
To tinker with the brain
That's a great way to put it.
and the nervous system.
And what's even more fascinating is that different toxins target different parts of the nervous system.
Right.
Some disrupt the way neurons communicate with each other, while others interfere with the signals between nerves and muscles.
So we have a whole toolbox
We do.
of these venomous wrenches at our disposal.
Right.
What are some of the most interesting ones that are being used today?
Well, you've given us some really good sources to work with, and we're going to be exploring 5 particularly fascinating neurotoxins.
Okay.
Dendrotoxin, bungarotoxin, chlorotoxin, cobra venom, cardiotoxins, and palytoxin.
Those names
I know.
sound as impressive as their effects.
They do.
Let's start with dendrotoxin.
Okay.
What makes this toxin so special?
So dendrotoxin comes from the venom of the black mamba snake,
Okay.
and it has a very specific target: potassium channels in neurons.
And these channels are like tiny gates that control the flow of potassium ions in and out of neurons, right?
Exactly. And potassium ions are involved in the electrical signaling that allows neurons to communicate. And what dendrotoxin does is effectively slam those potassium gates shut,
Wow.
blocking the flow of those ions.
So it's like cutting a wire in a circuit.
That's a good analogy. And by observing how the neurons behave when those potassium channels are blocked,
Okay.
neuroscientists can learn a lot about the role of potassium in neural communication.
So it's like we're observing what happens when a specific part of a machine malfunctions,
Yes,
and we gain a better understanding of how that part contributes to the overall function of the machine.
precisely. And in the case of dendrotoxin, scientists are particularly interested in its potential implications for understanding and treating conditions like epilepsy.
Epilepsy is a condition where there's abnormal electrical activity in the brain.
Right. Exactly. And by studying how dendrotoxin disrupts potassium channels,
Right.
researchers hope to gain insights into how those channels might contribute to the uncontrolled electrical firing that occurs during seizures.
So it's like using dendrotoxin to create a miniature model of epilepsy in the lab
Yes.
so we can study it more closely.
That's a great way to think about it. It allows researchers to isolate and study the specific role of potassium channels in these complex neurological processes.
This is already blowing my mind. I never would have guessed that snake venom could be so helpful for understanding the human brain.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Okay, what's our next venomous wrench?
Let's talk about bungarotoxin, which comes from the venom of the banded crate snake.
Okay.
This toxin is all about acetylcholine receptors.
Acetylcholine, that rings a bell. Isn't that a neurotransmitter?
You got it. Acetylcholine is a chemical messenger that plays a crucial role in communication between nerves and muscles,
Okay.
as well as in learning and memory.
So where does bungarotoxin fit into all of this?
Bungarotoxin acts like a molecular imposter. It binds to acetylcholine receptors on muscle cells,
Okay.
preventing acetylcholine from binding and effectively blocking the signal for muscle contraction.
So it's like a key that fits into the lock,
Yes.
but doesn't actually turn it.
Perfect analogy. And because of this blocking action, bungarotoxin is incredibly dangerous in its natural form.
Yeah.
It can cause paralysis by preventing muscles from receiving the signals they need to contract.
Okay, that sounds terrifying.
It is.
But I'm guessing there's a silver lining here.
Absolutely. While bungarotoxin is undoubtedly dangerous,
Uh-huh.
it's also an incredibly valuable tool for neuroscientists.
How so?
By using bungarotoxin, researchers can map the distribution of acetylcholine receptors throughout the nervous system.
Okay.
They can see exactly where these receptors are located and how they're organized.
It's like using a GPS to track down all the acetylcholine hotspots in the brain.
Precisely. And this detailed mapping information is incredibly valuable for understanding how acetylcholine signaling works in both healthy and diseased brains.
So even though it's dangerous in its natural form, bungarotoxin is actually giving us a powerful tool to study and potentially treat neurological disorders.
Exactly. For example, bungarotoxin has been instrumental in research on Alzheimer's disease, a condition where acetylcholine signaling is significantly disrupted.
So we've got dendrotoxin disrupting potassium channels and bungarotoxin blocking acetylcholine receptors. What's next on our list of venomous wonders?
Next up is chlorotoxin, which comes from the venom of the deathstalker scorpion.
Deathstalker scorpion.
Yeah, a name that definitely lives up to its reputation.
Yeah, that doesn't sound very
I
friendly.
know.
What does this scorpion toxin target?
Chlorotoxin has a very specific and intriguing target, glioma cells.
Gliomas, those are a type of brain tumor, right?
That's right. And they're notoriously difficult to treat because they tend to be very aggressive and infiltrate healthy brain tissue,
Yeah.
making surgical removal challenging.
So how does chlorotoxin help with this?
What's remarkable about chlorotoxin is its selectivity.
Okay.
It acts almost like a guided missile, binding specifically to glioma cells while largely ignoring healthy brain tissue.
So it's like a smart bomb for cancer cells.
Exactly. And this remarkable selectivity makes chlorotoxin a promising candidate for developing targeted cancer therapies.
Yeah, I can see how that would be a game changer. Imagine being able to deliver drugs or radiation directly to tumor cells without harming the surrounding healthy tissue.
Right.
That's incredible.
It's definitely a very exciting area of research, and while chlorotoxin-based therapies are still in the experimental stage, they hold tremendous potential for improving the treatment of brain tumors.
Okay, we've talked about toxins that disrupt communication between neurons, toxins that block signals between nerves and muscles, and toxins that target cancer cells. What other surprises does the venomous world have in store for us?
Our next toxin takes us from the world of snakes and scorpions to the depths of the ocean. We're talking about cobra venom cardiotoxins,
Cobra venom cardiotoxins.
which, as the name suggests, are found in the venom of cobras.
And I'm guessing cardio refers to the heart.
You got it. Cobra venom cardiotoxins specifically target ion channels in heart muscle cells,
Okay.
disrupting the delicate balance of ions that are essential for maintaining a regular heartbeat.
So they're like tiny wrenches that mess up the electrical wiring of the heart.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And the consequences of that disruption can be pretty serious,
Yeah.
potentially leading to irregular heart rhythms or even cardiac arrest.
Okay, I'm sensing a pattern here.
Yeah.
Deadly venom, potential medical breakthrough.
Right.
So how are scientists using these cardiotoxins to benefit us?
By studying how these toxins disrupt heart rhythm,
Yeah.
researchers can gain a much deeper understanding of how those ion channels work
Okay.
and how they contribute to normal heart function.
So it's like using a broken clock to figure out how a working one keeps time, right?
Exactly. By studying the extreme effects of these toxins,
Yeah.
scientists can gain valuable insights into the subtle mechanisms that keep our hearts beating regularly.
Fascinating. So we've covered dendrotoxin, bungarotoxin, chlorotoxin, and cobra venom cardiotoxins.
Oh, have.
They've all come from snakes and scorpions. I'm starting to see a trend here.
Yeah, it seems like it.
What's our final toxin for today?
Okay.
And does it also come from a venomous creature?
Our final toxin, palytoxin, comes from a rather unexpected source, a type of coral.
A coral? Wow, that's surprising.
I know.
I wouldn't have guessed that something as beautiful as coral could produce such a potent toxin.
It's a great reminder that nature is full of surprises. And palytoxin is a particularly interesting case because it's considered one of the most potent marine toxins known to humankind.
So how does it work? What does it target?
Unlike the other toxins we've discussed, which have very specific targets like potassium channels or acetylcholine receptors,
Okay.
palytoxin is a bit more of a general disruptor. It interferes with ion transport across cell membranes, essentially throwing cellular communication into disarray.
So it's like a massive EMP blast that shuts down all communication systems.
That's a pretty dramatic analogy, but it captures the essence of what palytoxin does. It affects the sodium-potassium pump,
Yep.
which is crucial for maintaining the balance of ions inside and outside of cells.
Okay.
And this disruption has widespread effects on cellular function.
Okay, that sounds pretty chaotic,
It is.
but I'm guessing there's a scientific silver lining here as well.
Absolutely. By studying how palytoxin causes the cellular chaos,
Yeah.
scientists can gain insights into the fundamental workings of ion pumps and channels that are essential for life.
It's like studying a train wreck to understand how the train tracks are supposed to work.
That's a good way to put it. By studying the extreme effects of palytoxin,
Uh-huh.
scientists can gain a deeper understanding of the subtle mechanisms that govern ion transport and cellular communication.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
I know, right?
From snake venom to scorpion toxins to coral poisons.
That's right.
It's amazing to think that these deadly substances can be harnessed to understand the brain and potentially treat diseases.
It's a testament to the power of scientific inquiry and the ingenuity of researchers who are constantly seeking new ways to understand the world around us.
Wow, my brain is definitely buzzing with all this new information. I think we need a little break to process everything we've learned so far.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
We'll be back soon with more on toxins as neuroscience tools.
Welcome back. We're ready to dig a little deeper now into some of these toxins we talked about.
I know, we covered so much in the first part. It's fascinating how these potent substances
Right.
can be harnessed to unlock
It
the
is.
secrets of the brain.
It is pretty amazing how nature gives us these incredible tools,
Yeah.
and we're just scratching the surface.
Speaking of scratching the surface,
Yeah.
I'm eager to dig a little deeper into some of these toxins that we mentioned
Okay.
in the first part. Let's start with dendrotoxin.
Okay.
That's the one from the black mamba, right?
That's right. Dendrotoxin is fascinating because it targets these potassium channels
Right.
with such precision.
And you mentioned that potassium channels play a crucial role in how
Exactly.
neurons communicate with each other.
Yes.
Can you remind me how that works?
Sure. So neurons have these tiny gates called ion channels, and they control the flow of charged particles called ions
Okay.
in and out of the cell.
Okay.
Potassium channels are one type of ion channel, and they specifically control the flow of potassium ions.
So it's like a doorway,
Yes,
specifically for potassium ions.
precisely. And this flow of potassium ions is essential for maintaining the electrical balance of the neuron,
Okay.
which allows it to generate and transmit signals.
So dendrotoxin blocks that doorway.
Exactly. And when that happens, it disrupts the delicate balance of ions within the neuron,
Okay.
making it more difficult for the neuron to fire properly.
And that disruption allows scientists to study what happens when those potassium channels aren't functioning correctly. It's like creating a controlled short circuit
Yeah,
to see how the system responds.
that's a great way to put it. And what's interesting is that this disruption can actually mimic certain neurological conditions.
Oh, right, like epilepsy.
Like epilepsy, exactly.
How does dendrotoxin help us understand epilepsy?
Well, in epilepsy, you have periods of abnormal electrical activity in the brain that leads to seizures. And one of the key players in these electrical storms is the disruption of potassium channels.
So by using dendrotoxin to block potassium channels in the lab,
Yes,
scientists can create a model of what might be happening
that's right.
in the brains of people with epilepsy.
Precisely. It allows them to study the specific role of potassium channels in seizure activity
Yeah.
and to test potential treatments that might target those channels.
So it's like a tiny magnifying glass
Yeah.
that allows us to zoom in
That's a great way to think about it.
on a specific part of the brain.
Yeah, and that's the power of these toxins. They give us this level of precision that would be incredibly difficult to achieve
Right.
with other techniques.
Dendrotoxin is mind-blowing.
It is a pretty amazing toxin.
What's next?
Let's move on to bungarotoxin,
Okay.
the one that comes from the banded crepe.
Oh, yeah, that's the one that targets acetylcholine receptor.
You got it. And acetylcholine, as you might recall,
Yes.
is a neurotransmitter that plays a key role in communication between nerves and muscles.
Right. It's like the messenger
Exactly.
that tells the muscles to contract.
Exactly. And what bungarotoxin does is essentially block those messages
Oh, wow.
from getting through.
So it's like intercepting a top secret message
That's a great analogy.
before it reaches its destination.
Bungarotoxin binds to acetylcholine receptors on muscle cells,
Okay.
and it prevents acetylcholine from binding,
Okay.
effectively cutting off the communication between the nerves and muscles.
And that's why it's so dangerous. It causes paralysis.
Precisely. By blocking those signals, bungarotoxin prevents muscles from receiving the instructions
Yeah.
they need to contract.
Right.
leading to paralysis.
Not something you want to mess with in nature.
Definitely not.
But how are scientists using this
Right.
powerful toxin as a research tool?
Bungarotoxin has been incredibly valuable for mapping the distribution of acetylcholine receptors
Okay.
in the nervous system.
So it's like a searchlight
Yes.
that allows scientists to pinpoint
That's a great way to put it.
exactly where those receptors are located.
And this information has been crucial for understanding a wide range of neurological processes,
Yeah.
from muscle control to learning and memory.
I'm interested in its potential applications for studying Alzheimer's disease.
Okay.
You mentioned that the acetylcholine signaling is disrupted in Alzheimer's.
That's right. One of the hallmarks of Alzheimer's is the loss of neurons that produce acetylcholine.
Right.
And this loss of acetylcholine signaling
Right.
contributes to the cognitive decline
Right.
seen in patients.
So how does bungarotoxin help us here?
Bungarotoxin has been instrumental in helping researchers understand how acetylcholine receptors are affected in Alzheimer's disease.
Okay.
By studying how bungarotoxin interacts with these receptors
Yeah.
in both healthy and diseased brains,
Okay.
scientists are gaining a better understanding of the molecular mechanisms
Right.
underlying the disease.
It's like comparing a blueprint of a healthy brain
Yes,
to a blueprint of a brain
exactly.
affected by Alzheimer's.
And by looking at the differences, you can start to piece together what's going wrong.
Right, right.
And that knowledge is essential
Yeah.
for developing effective treatments.
This is incredible. It's amazing to think that these toxins, which are so dangerous in their natural form,
Right.
can be such powerful tools
I agree.
for scientific discovery.
Nature often provides us with the most unexpected solutions.
Speaking of unexpected solutions,
Yes.
our next toxin comes from a pretty surprising source,
It does.
the deathstalker scorpion. That's the one that produces chlorotoxin.
That's right. And chlorotoxin is particularly interesting because it has this very specific target. Glioma cells?
Gliomas are those aggressive brain tumors
Think
that we
of it.
talked about earlier, right?
And they're notoriously difficult to treat
Yeah.
because they tend to spread and invade healthy brain tissue.
So how did chlorotoxin help with this?
What's remarkable about chlorotoxin is its selectivity.
Okay.
It binds specifically to glioma cells,
Oh, wow.
while largely ignoring healthy brain cells.
It's like a heat-seeking missile
Yes,
that zeroes in on the cancer cells,
that's a great analogy.
but leaves the healthy cells unharmed.
And this selectivity makes chlorotoxin a promising candidate for developing targeted cancer therapies.
You mentioned that earlier. Can you elaborate on how that might work?
Well, imagine you could attach a powerful anti-cancer drug
Yeah.
to chlorotoxin.
Okay.
Because chlorotoxin binds so selectively to glioma cells,
Right.
it would essentially act as a delivery system, carrying the drug directly to the tumor cells while minimizing the damage to healthy tissue.
It's like a Trojan horse, sneaking the anti-cancer drug right into the heart of the tumor.
Precisely. And that's the dream of targeted cancer therapy,
Right.
to deliver treatments directly to the cells that need them
Yeah.
while sparing healthy cells from unnecessary damage.
This is incredible. It's amazing to think that a toxin from a scorpion could be the key to a more effective and less harmful way to treat brain cancer.
It really is, and it highlights the importance of exploring the natural world
Yeah.
for potential medical breakthroughs. You never know where the next big discovery might come from.
Okay, so we've talked about toxins that target potassium channels,
Right.
acetylcholine receptors, and glioma cells.
Yeah.
What's next on our list?
Let's dive into the world of cobra venom cardiotoxins.
Cobra venom cardiotoxin.
Ones that target the heart.
Those sound particularly intimidating.
They are potent.
Yeah.
Cobra venom cardiotoxins specifically target ion channels in heart muscle cells.
And ion channels are those tiny gates that control the flow of ions in and out of cells, right?
Exactly.
We talked about them earlier with dendrotoxin.
Exactly. But in this case, the ion channels being targeted are in heart muscle cells, not neurons.
Right. Okay.
And the disruption of those channels can have serious consequences for heart function.
So it's like throwing a wrench into the delicate machinery
That's a good analogy.
that keeps our hearts beating.
And the consequences of that disruption can be pretty severe, potentially leading to irregular heart rhythms or even cardiac arrest.
Okay, I'm starting to see a pattern here. Deadly venom,
Right.
potential medical application.
So how are scientists using these cardiotoxins to help us?
Yeah, that's my question.
It might seem counterintuitive, but by studying how these toxins disrupt heart rhythm,
Yeah.
researchers can gain valuable insights into the fundamental mechanisms
Okay.
that control heart function.
It's like using a broken clock to figure out how a working one keeps time.
That's a great way to put it. And the knowledge gained from studying these cardiotoxins is being used to develop treatments for various heart conditions,
Okay.
from arrhythmias to heart failure.
So even though they're incredibly dangerous
They are.
in their natural form,
Yeah.
these cobra venom cardiotoxins are actually providing us with valuable clues
You are.
for treating heart disease.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that even the most dangerous substances can hold the key to scientific breakthroughs.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
I feel like my brain is buzzing
It is a lot to take in.
with all this new information.
Before we move on to our last toxin, should we do a quick recap?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay, we talked about dendrotoxin, which blocks potassium channels in neurons,
Mm-hmm.
potentially leading to insights into epilepsy treatment. Then we discussed bungarotoxin, which targets acetylcholine receptors
Right.
and has been instrumental in research on Alzheimer's disease. We explored chlorotoxin and its potential for targeted cancer therapies, thanks to its selective binding to glioma cells. And we just discussed how cobra venom cardiotoxins are helping us understand and treat heart conditions.
That's a great summary. I'm ready for our last toxin.
Ah.
Okay, we've made it to our final toxin for today, and the one that comes from coral.
Yeah, palytoxin, our last stop on this journey
Okay.
to these venomous neuroscience tools.
So we talked about how it disrupts ion transport
Right.
across cell membranes.
Uh-huh.
But can you elaborate on that a bit more? What's it doing to these cells?
So palytoxin is a little bit like a master key
Right.
that can jam multiple locks in the cellular machinery.
Okay.
It disrupts that delicate balance of ions like sodium and potassium,
Right.
which are crucial for all sorts of cellular processes, from nerve impulses to muscle contractions.
So instead of targeting like a specific channel
Yeah.
or receptor,
Uh-huh.
it's like throwing a wrench into the entire system.
That's a great way to put it. It creates this widespread chaos in the cellular environment, disrupting communication and throwing everything off balance.
You mentioned that one of its primary targets
Yeah.
is the sodium-potassium pump.
Right.
Can you remind me what that pump does?
Okay, so the sodium-potassium pump
Yeah.
is like a tiny bouncer at the cell's nightclub.
Okay.
It's constantly working
Oh.
to maintain the right balance of sodium and potassium ions inside and outside the cell.
Okay.
It pumps sodium out and potassium in, creating an electrochemical gradient
Okay.
that's essential for nerve impulses,
Uh-huh.
muscle contractions,
Right.
a whole host of other cellular functions.
So palytoxin is basically disabling the bouncer,
Yes.
letting all the wrong ions into the club.
And that throws everything into disarray. When ion transport is disrupted,
Right.
cells can become overloaded with calcium,
Oh, wow.
which can trigger a cascade of events that ultimately lead to cell death.
That sounds pretty dramatic. I'm starting to see why
It is.
palytoxin is considered so dangerous.
It's incredibly potent.
But even in its destructive power, there's valuable scientific knowledge to be gained.
Absolutely.
So how are scientists using this
Right.
cellular chaos
Yeah.
to their advantage?
By studying how palytoxin causes all this havoc at the cellular level,
Yeah.
scientists can gain a deeper understanding of how ion transport contributes to various physiological processes.
Right.
They can see which systems are most vulnerable to disruption and how those disruptions affect the cell's overall function.
It's like watching a building collapse. To
Yeah,
understand how the structural supports.
that's a great analogy. And this knowledge can then be applied to a wide range of research areas,
Okay.
from developing new drugs for heart conditions to understanding how nerve cells communicate.
So even though palytoxin is incredibly dangerous,
Yes,
it's giving us valuable insights
it is.
into the fundamental workings of our cells.
Exactly. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the most unexpected sources can lead to the most groundbreaking discoveries.
This deep dive has been incredible.
It has.
We've covered so much.
I know, right?
From snake venom, scorpion toxins, to coral poisons.
It's amazing how these deadly substances can be harnessed for good, isn't it?
It really is. It's a testament to scientists who are constantly pushing the boundaries of knowledge.
It is.
They're taking these potent tools that nature has provided
Right.
and using them to unlock the secrets of the brain and develop new treatments for a wide range of diseases.
And it's a powerful reminder that even in the most dangerous corners of the natural world,
Yes,
there's this potential for healing and discovery.
it really is. Nature is full of surprises, and sometimes the deadliest substances
Right.
can hold the key to those life-saving breakthroughs.
They do.
Our listeners will never look at snake venom, scorpion toxins, or coral the same way again.
I hope they have a newfound appreciation for the power of nature
Yeah,
and the incredible potential of these toxins as tools for scientific discovery.
maybe some of them
Yeah,
will be inspired to pursue careers in neuroscience.
that would be great. The world always needs more curious minds exploring the mysteries of the brain.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through the world of toxins as neuroscience tools. Until next time, keep those brain cells buzzing.